Is Jaylen Brown your MVP of the series, and is that the most important story with the Celtics right now? And if not, what is?
Yes, Jaylen Brown is my MVP, and it's not just based on the offensive production. I think the defensive production as well. In Game 3, he had one of these flying out of nowhere blocks to block a three-pointer. I think what he's given you on both ends and just sort of the consistency, the 24-point second half, the big shot you guys played, I would say right now he is my MVP for the finals. I don't think that's the biggest story, though. For me, the biggest story coming out of this finals, and it does apply to Game 3, that was the first game of the playoffs that Brown and Tatum each scored 30 in the same game. And if you look at the way those guys played, because we've heard a lot, obviously, this postseason about it's not all about points. It's not all about points. So let's look at some of the other stuff. Half of Brown's 8 assists were to Tatum, and 3 of Tatum's 5 assists were to Brown. I think the biggest storyline is we can finally put to rest, basketball-wise, the idea or the notion that these guys can't play together, that they can't bring out the best in each other, that you're not going to win with them, that they're redundant. Now, after they win, as we've seen with the Patriots, and I think you saw it a little bit with the Warriors as well. Now, after you win, it's a little bit different in terms of the interpersonal relationships, and you want to make that argument. But we'll worry about that down the road, and hopefully, another title from now. It's multiple titles. But for now, I thought Game 3, the way they played, the way they embraced after the game, the way they talked about each other after the game, I think puts to rest the idea from a basketball standpoint and at least a team building standpoint that they can't function together and that is some sort of impediment to winning. To me, that's the biggest story that comes out of these finals.
How did they get there?
How did they get there? Mm-hmm. I think they got there, first of all, a lot of losing, over the years. The idea of falling short. Like Jaylen Brown talked about how motivated he was. But I think that this postseason, this is just my opinion, this postseason has been an awakening of some sorts for Tatum from the standpoint of offensively, from a point scoring standpoint. I don't think he's played as well as he thought he would play. And I don't think he's played as well as he thought he needed to play for the team to win. But now he sees the team's won 10 in a row, and he doesn't have to be the guy all the time. And the way to get insulated from some of the criticism he's endured in the past is to make plays in other aspects of the game on a really good team, because you only get assists when you pass to a guy who scores. You can make all the greatest passes in the world. I think Luka would like a word on this. If I flip it to some guy wide open in the corner for a 3 or some buffoon who can't finish an alley-oop, is that my fault? No. But if, you whip it to somebody in the corner who up fakes, takes 3 dribbles, and Euro steps around 2 guys, like Drew Holiday did earlier in the season for Tatum, that goes down as an assist. So I think he sort of has learned to appreciate the idea of, you have a margin for error, and also a margin to be able to beat back the criticism a little bit when you're on a better team. And then I also think Brown has, I don't want to say earned his respect, because I think he had his respect before, but watching Brown elevate the way he has in the postseason, I think if you're Tatum, you have to sort of look at it and say, okay, this doesn't always have to be me. There's another dog here who can get it done.
Chris, didn't Tatum make a comment recently? I want to say it might have been in the last round, maybe at the beginning of this one, about how Brown now sees the game versus how he did. He did. There was a comment like that stuck out to me, because it was Tatum saying his, exactly what you're talking about there, that his game sense has gone to another level. He now sees the whole picture. And because you remember Brown would get the ball and put his head down and just go to the basket. That doesn't seem to happen anymore. So I guess what I'm asking is, do you remember the comment? Do you remember what it was?
I recall the comment. I can't repeat it verbatim, but yes, you're right. I think that's a great point, Maz. The idea that he maybe has the trust now in Jaylen Brown to be able to read the game and see the game the way that Tatum's capable of doing. We've seen that with some of the passing from Brown, particularly in the last 2 rounds. I do think that that's an element. If you're looking at it with Tatum, you can say, okay, I can trust this guy more. And they can trust each other, that if the ball leaves one, I feel like this postseason, and I could be wrong, but this well and better than it has in past postseasons. And I feel like it's been less your turn, my turn sort of offense. And maybe part of that is because, frankly, Tatum's turns have not been as productive as we're accustomed to in terms of points, putting the ball in the basket. So maybe that's something that's facilitated it. But I just feels less. They feel more connected to me when they're on the floor than they have in the past, where you felt like, okay, we have sort of two competing interests happening here. They're both beneficial to the Celtics, but they're not really linked. Now I feel like they're more linked. So to me, that's the biggest thing that comes out of it. And that was my biggest takeaway from Game 3, the way they did it together, not just the scoring, but the passing to each other and the embrace afterwards. And Jaylen Brown saying, that's my brother. I think you have to feel really good as a Celtics fan about that development and being able to finally put that myth to rest.
Christopher Gasper of the Boston Globe join us for his regular Friday stint. We'll take your calls coming up in a second. First, Chris, your thoughts on what's turned into the big national story related to the finals, and that's Luka Doncic. What are your thoughts on him right now?
Yeah, look, I would say this. I think that this series has hurt Luka and has hurt his reputation. I think his surliness, his laziness, and his aimlessness on defense have been obvious for all to see. Now, I will say, He is battling through some injuries. That's not a complete excuse, but he has the MCL in the right knee, the ankle, and the thoracic contusion. The only reason I bring that up is last year when the Celtics lost Game 7 and Jayson, from an entertainment standpoint, the best player in the league. But Luka Legend is more like Luka lethargy. I mean, there's not enough. And I also thought I understand his frustration with the officiating to a degree, but that fouling out the other day was on him. He had at least 2 fouls that were lazy frustration fouls. One was on Pritchard in the fourth quarter, and there was one in the third quarter, early in the third, where he didn't get a call, and he just started hacking Derek White in the backcourt like he was trying to chop down a tree. And it's like, what are you doing? So I think this has been, Tatum has endured a lot of criticism this postseason. I'll put my Marcus Smart hat on, rightfully so, I will say. But I also think when you look at this with Luka, if you're going to criticize Tatum, I mean, you got to criticize Luka times 2, because this just is not good enough from an effort standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, from an attitude standpoint, to call yourself a champion or to call yourself the face of the league. This is bad. This is really, and I don't know if he can save face tonight, even if they lose, if there's more effort there. But if he doesn't learn from this and come back a different guy, this one's going to stick to him and stick with him for a while. And I think people are going to leave this series thinking less of Luka Doncic than they did going in. I certainly know I am.
I have. And Chris, I don't think, there's anyone in the NBA that has a bigger offseason ahead of them. And what's it going to be for Doncic? You're going to fully commit to your craft. You're going to get in better shape. Are you really going to be one of the best players in the league that you can be, from wire to wire? Or is it going to be more committing to heavy cream and moussaka and fries and Overwatch? Because
and more tattoos.
Yeah.
He has to learn. He has to learn. Sorry, folks. No. I mean, it's funny. Again, this Ramona Shelburne story, the second one today, is all about basically Jason Kidd, the Mavericks, and even his teammates in Slovenia telling him all this stuff. And to this point, he's ignored them. And maybe part of that, Mike, is because he's had success. Maybe he needs to fail to really change.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Maz here. For more Celtics analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.